0600, Fieberling 6 Avengers based on Midway, originally part of Hornet's VT-8, took off to engage the Japanese.
Almost an hour out from the takeoff, Bert called over the intercom and said, I can see some ships on the horizon, large ships. Almost within minutes of that occurring, then Manning called over the intercom and said, we're being attacked by Japanese fighter plane.
Well, there wasn't any question, but we had found them. The question was who'd found who.
I was down on my knees with my .30 caliber machine gun. So I looked back over my shoulder and I could see the turret had stowed and that Jim was hanging just in the harness, and obviously blood everywhere, that he was obviously dead at that point.
And we drove down to the water. The other section of 3 did the same, but they were a little behind us. So I never could see exactly what happened to them. I just don't remember exactly when they stopped firing at me. I don't guess they ever stopped firing at me.
Then the next thing I remember, I felt a real hot, almost like a soldering iron on my wrist. It was actually a bullet had grazed me and cut my wrist open, but not severely, just enough to cause some bleeding. But then I went back to my gun position, still down on my knees. And then the next thing that I do remember was hanging down, coming to, and I put my hand up on my head, and it almost felt like a hole in my head and just blood pouring off. And I was wearing a baseball cap at the time, and this is my cap that I had on, and there's the bullet hole in the cap where I'd been hit on the head.
About that time, my stick went left in my hand. She started down just slightly, with the trim just slightly nose down. I figured, well, anything I can do, I'm going to go in the water, but I'm going to drop this torpedo or something anyway. So I kicked the airplane to the left, but I got in a position where I thought I had a decent lead on the ship and I dropped the torpedo. After I dropped the torpedo, as I was about to hit the water, I rolled the elevator trim back, which I'd forgotten. I thought when I lost it and she started going down, that my elevators were gone. The elevator trim tabs were still there. And I had goofed and not realized it. Maybe it saved my life, I don't know.
When you're in a situation like that, time almost loses any significance. But I can remember hearing stuff hitting the airplane. And then after a while, it got pretty quiet. And so then I got on the intercom and called Ensign Ernest and told him that Jim was dead and asked for permission to climb up into the second seat behind the pilot. And he gave me permission to do that. And then we just motored on for probably an hour or close to an hour. And I guess simultaneously both he and I could see a lot of black smoke on the horizon and made the assumption that that probably was Midway, and Midway was on fire.
The first attack by American forces on June 4th against the Kido Butai registered no hits on the Japanese ships. The American pilots and planes were not that fortunate. In the midst of this confusion, USS Nautilus, a submarine, attacked Kido Butai with torpedoes and was counterattacked with depth charges. Nautilus was to be a persistent observer to the battle.
Then we got to talking, and by early afternoon, dive bombers during the attack on the atoll. It was a pretty disappointing and dismal time that here all my shipmates we finally realized were gone and weren't going to be back.
As the TBF Avengers and B-26 bombers were making their attack on the Japanese fleet, the planes from Hornet and Enterprise were just leaving the flight deck. When can their glory fade? Oh, the wild charge they made, all the world wondered. honor the charge they made.
Actually, we made our attack when the carriers were just beginning to launch their aircraft, because Torpedo didn't make its attack, Torpedo 8, until sometime after 10 a.m. in the morning. And we had attacked at 7 a.m. in the morning.
Admiral Spruance launched the planes of Task Force 16 at the earliest possible time and at the limit of their range. The plan was to catch the Japanese planes returning from the Midway strike.
On the 4th of June, when we were all launched to go out and bomb the Japs, the Enterprise and the Hornet were launched with a full group, all the squadrons and all the planes.
So the first thing was McCluskey, who was as the group commander, had us launch all our planes. We'd been sitting ready to go for more than a couple of days, ready to go. And so we took off and we headed towards the Yorktown. And we're expecting the Yorktown planes to follow us.
The Yorktown didn't do this. The admiral on the Yorktown said, well, I'm going to wait until we find out if there are more than 2 carriers.
I guess there was trepidation and some concern. I wouldn't say that I was ever scared, but there was certainly concern. And the minute I got in that cockpit and took off, training took over.
Led by leaders like Dick Best, Wade McCluskey, and John Waldron, planes from 3 American carriers flew toward the Japanese fleet. Not all the aircraft found the Japanese.
The Air Group Commander said, you're going to fly my course. Our commander was Stanhope C. Ring. He was a CAG. So when we went flying our course that we were going to intercept the Japs, we were on that course for a short time, and the torpedo planes broke off from that course and went their own course.
Plans for a coordinated attack quickly ended.
Then McCluskey, he was a fighter pilot, he figured, the first one that hit the other fellow was going to win. And our fuel gauge was just going down, down, down. So when we looked at the spot, where the carrier is supposed to be, nothing there.
Lieutenant Commander John Waldron led Torpedo 8 straight to the Japanese fleet.
They found the Japs, and it so happened that the torpedo planes, Torpedo 8, went right to the point where the Japs were.